Ain't nothing peculiar about the way that I was raised, and my heart is on the way.
Hey everybody, I hope all my unicorn warriors are doing great, wonderful, and fabulous. I'm trying to get back in the habit of doing these videos, and I started out with Mica's report that I did, and I told y'all I was going to do Chris Skinner's, so here we are, and we'll see how accurate most of this is, or because I also use Gemini and stuff to help create this. So, but talking about Chris Skinner, the investigative report on Chris Skinner cases, analysts, and contentious death and legal proceedings. All right. Executive summary and all right, I guess it's talking about like different Chris Skinners, but we know which Chris Skinner we're talking about. So the request regarding the Chris Skinner case necessitates immediate and careful differentiation. Sorry if I mispronounce any words, y'all. As the name corresponds to multiple high-stakes legal and criminal matters across several distinct jurisdictions, including South Carolina, New York, Toronto, and Mississippi. The recent surge in public and investigative attention is overwhelmingly directed toward the unresolved and controversial death of Chris Skinner in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, on September 6, 2021. This drowning incident, initially ruled accidental, has since become the focal point of an open and scrutinized investigation by the Horry County coroner following revelations of gross procedural failures and connections to other ongoing high-profile local scandals. A failure to separate these distinct matters risks conflating facts, circumstances, and legal outcomes. The extent, did I say that right? Of numerous high-stakes criminal and civil cases involving individuals named Chris or Christopher Skinner confirms the absolute requirement for rigorous confirmation of identity and context in investigative reporting. Establishing this structural separation is the foundational I can hear it in my head. I can't say it. prerequisite for accurately analyzing the specific controversies surrounding the Myrtle Beach incident. All right, and then the delineation of major Christopher Skinner cases. The primary matters involving individuals named Chris or Christopher Skinner, as documented in the investigative materials, are summarized below, clarifying their location, context, and current legal status. Table 1. Let's see. Christopher Skinner's case. Individual. Incident, location, and date. Chris Skinner, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, September 6, 2021. Alright. And that's our Chris Skinner. It's that first one. So I'm not even going to go into the other ones. Not that they're, less important or anything, but the Myrtle Beach drowning, 2021, context and initial findings. The death of Chris Skinner in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is currently the most active and contested Skinner case. The circumstances surrounding the incident on Labor Day, September 6, 2021, have raised profound questions due to the victim's life, history, and symbolic location of his death and severe deficiencies in the initial investigation. Chris Skinner's background and life of resilience. Chris Skinner was recognized nationally as a motivational speaker, author, and Army veteran. His life was characterized by exceptional resilience following a traumatic event at age 20 while serving in the Army National Guard and attending college. Skinner was involved in a devastating car crash caused by a drunk driver, which left him paralyzed from the chest down, specifically rendering him quadriplegic. Instead of yielding to despair, Skinner transformed his tragedy into a public philosophy of perseverance and purpose, encapsulated by his mantra, "Life matters, make it count." He dedicated his life to uplifting others and demonstrated a consistent commitment to triumph over tragedy. This established identity as an inspirational figure makes the subsequent suggestion of a despair-induced self-unaliving challenging to reconcile with his known character and philosophy. The scene of the incident, Emmons Preserve Pool. The location of Skinner's death, the Emmons Preserve neighborhood pool, possesses a profound and contested history that adds significant complexity to the case. Skinner was dependent on a specialized motorized wheelchair and died by drowning in the pool. Crucially, 4 years prior to the incident, Chris and his wife, Susie Skinner, had filed a civil rights complaint against their homeowners association regarding this exact pool. The complaint detailed that despite requesting reasonable accommodations necessary for the quadriplegic individual, Chris was repeatedly denied access, preventing him from safely enjoying the amenity. This history confirms that the pool was not a random site, but rather the contested locus of a 4-year struggle for dignity and accessibility linked directly to his paralysis narrative. The choice of this location for a potential self-unaliving would lend a layer of desperate protest to the act, fitting the idea of a final bitter commentary on the accessibility fight. Conversely, if the death involved foul play, placing the body in the specific historically contested location could have been a deliberate attempt to frame the death as a result of his disability struggle, thereby making an accidental slip seem superficially plausible to untrained investigators. This contextual history elevates the significance of the location well beyond that a typical neighborhood drowning. All right. And then SYSTEMIC, Investigative Failures and Contradictions in Myrtle Beach, 2021. The initial handling of Chris Skinner's death exposed severe procedural directions, I'm sorry, y'all, that are now widely considered catastrophic investigative failures. These omissions rendered a conclusive determination of the manner of death extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, years after the fact. Critical failure points in initial investigation. The single most consequential failure was the decision by the Horry County Chief Deputy Coroner Tamara Willard to forego an autopsy for a suspicious drowning involving a vulnerable adult and specialized equipment. An autopsy is a critical measure that could provide definitive forensic evidence regarding pre-mortem injury, the presence of defensive wounds, or toxicology. The permanent absence of this forensic data severely limits the scope of any subsequent investigation, whether ruling out homicide or verifying the cause of death. Furthermore, the initial coroner's report confirmed a complete lack of independent investigation. The report explicitly states that no independent interviews or witnesses were conducted. No evidence was reviewed, and no photographs were taken by the coroner's office to corroborate the findings. This protocol omission directly enabled the quick, unverified ruling of accidental drowning. This sequence of events suggests a profound lapse in professional duty, permanently biasing the investigation towards a non-criminal conclusion. Compounding these issues, the initial police file obtained via a Freedom of Information Act FOIA request contained photographs of Skinner's wheelchair, but notably no photographs of Chris Skinner in the pool or at the immediate scene. The failure to document the victim's position in the water is a severe lapse in scene preservation protocol. Conflicting official narratives and witness accounts. The discrepancy between the two investigating bodies, the Myrtle Beach Police Department and the Horry County coroner, demonstrated a lack of cohesive inquiry from the outset. Coroner's narrative. The coroner's report indicated that the wheelchair got too close to the pool edge and the wheel slipped. This suggests a passive failure associated with the equipment's proximity to the water. Myrtle Beach Police Department initial narrative. The Myrtle Beach Police Department's initial report, by contrast, indicated that the chair lunged suddenly or accelerated towards the pool. This suggests a more active, unexpected force drove the chair into the water. This subtle but significant conflict demonstrates that even the initial reports could not agree on the mechanism of entry. The new video evidence discussed further in Section V, which reportedly shows the chair being actively driven into the water, makes both initial accidental narratives, demonstrating the need for a total reclassification of the event. The widow's testimony and scene behavior. The conduct of Chris Skinner's wife, Susie Skinner, at the scene raised immediate concerns among first responders and officers. She claimed her husband had a do not resuscitate DNR order, but was unable to produce the necessary documentation while Chris was in the ambulance. She left the scene claiming to retrieve the paperwork, only to return later with conflicting accounts that did not align with either the police or the coroner's findings. During the reopened Myrtle Beach Police Department investigation in February 2025, Susie Skinner was formally interviewed after police read her Miranda rights, indicating that she was considered a potential person of interest. However, the interview was notable for its omissions. Police did not question her about the cited DNR order, the details of any life insurance policy, or the numerous inconsistencies noted in the original police report. Instead, she spoke at length about Chris's daily routine and paralysis, defending her view that the death was accidental. The conscious avoidance of key questions regarding the DNR or financial motive life insurance during the 2025 interview suggests either an effort to protect the investigative integrity from politically sensitive or emotionally charged lines of inquiry, or a deliberate narrowing of a scope that prevents a full airing of the anomalies initially documented. The context of external high-profile controversies. The official conclusion of accidental death in 2021 was widely accepted due to the lack of contradictory evidence at the time. However, the case was dramatically resurrected and scrutinized years later, not by eternal audit, but by its direct connection to the emerging saga of high-profile deaths linked to Pastor John Paul Miller. All right, the John Paul Miller nexus. Public focus was forcefully redirected to the Skinner case following the tragic and suspicious death of Mica Miller Francis in April 2024. The subsequent affidavit filed by Miller's ex-wife, Allison Williams, in a custody dispute was pivotal. The affidavit explicitly referenced an extramarital relationship between Pastor John Paul Miller and Susie Skinner, Chris Skinner's widow. Williams detailed that Miller was extremely upset when he called her the day Chris Skinner died, and that he had been utilizing his children to facilitate time spent with Susie. This personal linkage immediately placed the Skinner case within a broader pattern of suspicious deaths connected to the embattled pastor, drawing intense media scrutiny and comparisons to other high-profile South Carolina legal sagas such as the Murdaugh case. The reinvestigation was thus not an organic result of standard internal review, but a direct consequence of sustained media pressure and generated by an adjacent public scandal, public and familiar advocacy. The systemic failures of the initial 2021 investigation, coupled with the new context of the Miller scandal, catalyzed public demand on accountability. An online petition was circulated challenging the investigative handling by the Horry County Chief Deputy Coroner Tamara Willard. Advocates forming the Justice for Chris group publicly called for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, to take over the investigation within 24 hours. Wait, did I miss something? 24 hours of a vulnerable adult's death, arguing the deputy coroner should have involved SLED. Immediately, the coroner's office countered this demand, stating SLED involvement was not standard practice for a case initially classified as accidental. Well, if she would have did her job. Chris Skinner's family has also publicly cooperated with the reinvestigation of Chris's sister, Tamara McDermott, released a statement noting that the heightened attention was a direct result of Susie Skinner's continued association with John Paul Miller, confirming the family's belief that the circumstances surrounding the death warranted scrutiny. This familial stance against the official accidental ruling, fueled by the alleged relationship between the widow and the controversial pastor, shifts the public perception from mere investigative error toward potential third-party involvement or complicity. Let's see. Statutes of the Reinvestigation 2024-2025. The investigative process regarding Chris Skinner's death is currently in a state of flux, with law enforcement action completed but the final legal classification still pending. Myrtle Beach Police Department action and evidentiary shifts. The Myrtle Beach Police Department investigation was reopened in December 2024 and subsequently closed in March 2025. No, it didn't. During this 3-month window, detectives conducted witness interviews and added supplemental information to the initial report. Okay, I think they're talking about as far as like the police. Yeah, the police department. Okay. The most critical evidence obtained during the reopening phase was video footage which reportedly shows Skinner's specialized wheelchair being actively driven into the pool. This observation fundamentally contradicts both the coroner's theory Will slipped and the initial police theory. Sudden acceleration, the shift in description from passive accidental failure to an active intentional action, whether self-directed or by a third party, means the initial accidental ruling is rendered factually unsubstantiable. This change forces the final classification into the realm of intentional death, meaning self-unaliving or homicide, which I think is the second option, homicide. Horry County Coroner's open inquiry and pending determination. Despite the Myrtle Beach Police Department closing its supplemental investigation in March 2025, the Horry County Coroner's investigation remains officially open. The coroner retains the exclusive legal authority to change the manner of death listed on the death certificate. Due to the increased attention and the nature of the newly introduced video evidence, the key video footage is undergoing specialized forensic analysis by the FBI. The ultimate determination hinges on this analyst. Deputy Coroner Willard confirmed the open status of the inquiry, noting that new evidence provided by Skinner's sister may suggest the death was self-unaliving. That's not true. Rather than an accident. This introduction of self-done as a potential classification alongside the homicidal implications of the actively driven video footage underscores the irreversible breakdown of the 2021 accidental finding. The evidence collected and reviewed must now be used to conclusively settle whether the intentional act was self-directed or perpetrated by another. Alright, so then we got the chronologically, of the Chris Skinner Myrtle Beach case timeline. So in 2017, this is perfect. 2017, a civil rights complaint filed. Remember, that was against the HOA. September 6, 2021, Chris Skinner passes away by drowning. 2021, initial, case closed. 2024, post Mica Francis allegation surface. December 2024, Myrtle Beach Police Department investigation reopened. February 2025, Susie Skinner interviewed. And we all remember that, where she was just so unhinged. March 2025, Myrtle Beach Police Department investigation closed. 2025, ongoing coroner's investigation. Biguation resolved and related Skinner cases. For comprehensive report fidelity, the details of the other major cases bearing the Skinner name are outlined, confirming their separation from the Myrtle Beach controversy. Oh, here is the timeline. So, do y'all remember when we found out about the civil rights complaint that was filed and how they were going to try and sue the HOA, and then after Chris passed away, just magically Susie just forgot all about that, and then let's see, what else was there? I think the only correction is it was about where it said Chris's sister. It wasn't her doing. I mean, she spoke with Willard. We've heard those conversations on the Truth Strip, which she did an amazing job, and I hope she continues. And let's see, I think that was probably the only correction. Okay, yeah, and we know that Skinner and John Paul Miller, or Susie, they're married, so of course they're still together and associated together. Oh, and yeah, and Tamara Willard, she failed. She was supposed to, because Chris was a vulnerable adult, report it to SLED, And it doesn't matter if it was accidental, self-done, you know, whatever excuse there was. Like, there was no ifs, ands, and buts. She failed. That should have been turned over to SLED and been fully investigated. So, and then, you know, it would have came out then that, you know, Chris was being neglected and mistreated. So, and I would like everyone to please, please, please keep your prayers and thoughts with Tamara, Chris's sister, and his family and his children, y'all, because they are still living, you know, with distress and, you know, learning these things, you know. I mean, it's not easy, y'all. And with the things that have happened, you know, here recently and stuff, I'm not really going to get into it right now, but yeah, y'all just please pray for them. And y'all leave some blue hearts in the comment, you know, to show your love and support for that family. So, all right, y'all. Today's your birthday. Happy birthday. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know your thoughts. And if today's your birthday, happy birthday!